Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today, indeed, we have more Gamers 8 to talk about. So, day one in the books, 3 more days to go. I think we saw a total of 6 games, and we have, I think, 4 more for the group stage, and then the 3 more games for the playoffs. So, we'll look at the bracket in a second. I guess a few things to talk about first. They've added information and changed up a little bit of information on the Liquipedia, probably as a result of just lack of information, but I don't know what the deal was. Prize pool, it now says 1.2 million. That is because the way that they're distributing the prizes, they're only giving out 1.2 million. They already have or will or whatever give an additional $100,000 to each of the teams as assistants. So I talked about in the previous video, don't really want to go into it. And they did also add this. So $100,000 to the MVP, $25,000 to the player with the most kills. And so this is obviously based on an objective metric, whoever gets the actual most kills. MVP, I don't know how that's going to be awarded exactly, if that is going to be maybe just the highest rated player from the winning team, or if it's going to be selected by a person or a group of people. We'll have to see. I guess it's entirely possible the MVP and the most kills player will be the same person. They probably want to try to avoid that. That's a little bit lame, but maybe it'll have to happen. Maybe somebody will be so crazy. And yeah, so that is on top of the $2 million that is awarded. Well, 1.2 million that is awarded plus 800,000 static giving out whatever. Okay, so you'll notice here Damwon first team eliminated from the event, and the reason there's not 2 teams already eliminated, they already held more games for Group A than Group B. I don't know why they did that, but that's just how they decided to do it. So I think only 1 game left to be played in Group A and 3 games left to be played in Group B. So we'll look at those in just a second. I also want to note Wild is playing with a sub. So I thought maybe I'd missed this, but I went back in my previous video and saw that this was not the case. That I hadn't missed it. It just hadn't been added just yet. BZ not able to play. I thought I heard on the stream that they said he wasn't able to travel, so I don't know when the team was made aware of this, but they are playing with Kaneo, who is, I don't know if he's a sub or an analyst or what the deal is. He's been holding his own, and very impressively, Wild is the top performing team at the event thus far. We do need to see BDS versus TSM. One of those teams will match their performance in that they go 2-0. We haven't seen that matchup just yet. But yeah, Wild is the only team that's gotten 2 wins, and they're on also no losses. They are the first team to qualify for the playoffs, doing it with a sub. And I also said in the previous video that they are an EUCL team, a Challenger League team. That's not true. They are trying to make it into a Challenger League team. They are currently just an EUCL or a EU T3 team. So they got, I think, second place in the recent Challenger League qualifier, but not enough to make it. So I guess they are still looking for that. And so with all of that taken into account, very, very impressive what we've seen from them thus far. So let's look at the actual games now. Group A, as I mentioned, has had more games than Group B. Let's start over here on Group A. Liquid versus Wild. This game was, for lack of a better word, Wild. 7-1, 7-1 in favor of Wild. So this is just almost an unprecedented beatdown. At some points in Siege, we've seen like back-to-back maps where a team didn't drop games, but it was, like Penta G2 or something versus some random APAC team, or just like very lopsided matchups. And I suppose this looks like on paper a very lopsided matchup. If you heard that Liquid versus Wild was a 2-0, a 7-1, 7-1, you'd be like, oh, of course Liquid destroyed them. It's Liquid versus a T3 EU team, but no, it was Wild that dealt out this insane beatdown. So that's the first game, and just absolutely crazy. Damwon versus Space Station. So Liquid versus Wild, a massive upset, and I'd say Damwon losing to Space Station also an upset. Space Station barely missed out on the major in stage 1, and then they missed out by a decent margin in stage 2. I guess still a fairly slim margin because of how close NA was, but ending up in 9th place. They were several positions away from making it. So yeah, Damwon falls, and it was a pretty close series, 7-5 for one team, 7-5 for the other, and then a 7-4 in the final map. And Dexter really turned things around, had a brutal chalet, but then a very good theme park and bank, and that probably was the big difference maker that allowed SSG to take these 2 maps, I'd say. And so maybe just needed a little bit of time to adapt to playing on the big stage, but overall pretty good showing by Dexter in this match. And yeah, so that sets up Damwon versus Liquid in the lower bracket. One of these 2 teams, probably the 2 favorites for the event in a lot of people's eyes, will now be eliminated, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let's do the upper bracket first. Yeah, so SSG loses to Wild, and it was kind of crazy to see. After the first map, SSG handled them pretty handily on Clubhouse, and so maybe a little bit of a return to form for SSG on that map. That was always their famous map, maybe been a little bit shaky on it. in modern times, but very impressive showing, and especially 7-2ing the team that just only dropped 2 rounds against Liquid. Yeah, very big. But then they couldn't close out Oregon or Villa. I don't know why this says 6-5. They won it in the end. SSG wasn't able to take it to overtime, and Wild is the first team to make it out of their group. And again, we'll see TSM or BDS make it out, and then also another team make it out of Group B, as well as Liquid or Space Station. But I guess let's talk about Liquid versus Damwon. So this is a peculiar series. So Liquid 7-1s Damwon after being 7-1 twice by Wild, and then they get 7-1. So at this point, Liquid has played 4 7-1 games, or I guess 3 1-7 games and 1 7-1 game. And so this is really reminiscent of what happened in Wild versus Space Station, or excuse me, in Space Station versus Damwon, where they both trade back and forth at the same scoreline, but it's really weird that it's 7-1s instead of 7-3s, 4s, 5s, or whatever. And then we go into Skyscraper and a closer game, but Liquid manages to close it out, eliminating Damwon from the tournament. And so I don't know if this just bodes poorly for Damwon at the major, or if it is because they also had to worry about playing at the major. I believe they're going straight there. There's no reason for them to go, from Saudi Arabia to Korea back to Berlin when they don't need to. It's much easier to just go to Berlin, which I believe is what's happening. So yeah, they just need to now turn their attention to the major, and that was probably always in the back of their minds, but also just getting instantly eliminated from this tournament maybe bodes poorly for the first seed from APAC. And so that sets up Liquid versus Space Station. Looks like a good, just looking at the orgs, looks like a good one on paper. It seems like Space Station should win. I feel like they've been a little bit better, especially because Liquid got crushed by Wild, where Space Station had a pretty close showing with Wild, so we'll have to see. Looking forward to seeing that one. And then over in Group B, we had TSM 2-0ing MIBR. So I don't remember if I made anything resembling a concrete prediction for this one. I think I probably was leaning towards MIBR. You might remember better than I do for whatever reason what I said. But okay, MIBR generally does well at international events, and they haven't made a roster change, whereas TSM generally also does pretty good at international events, barring Mexico Major, which was a little bit of an asterisk with Merc not being able to play. But okay, TSM did really poorly in NAL, 9th place into 8th place. Now they made a pretty hasty change for the event. They're bringing in Snake, and a very solid player based on his CL performance, but still a very quick turnaround time. But probably something I failed to take into account was the fact that TSM are the absolute LATAM slayers. So looking at the 2 international events they played in the last year, which are the Mexico Major and SI 2022, they crushed pretty much every LATAM team that they played. So at Mexico, they went 1-5 in their group, and again, this is with Merc subbed out, so very unfortunate for them there. But right, their one win was against Liquid, so they played everyone in the group twice, and they won against Liquid once, and they lost. So 1-1 there. But then let me show you the SI bracket, because this is pretty crazy. So TSM starts here. Do keep in mind, before this in their group, they did 2-0 Furia. So a 2-0 over Furia, a 2-0 over NiP, a 2-1 over Furia, a 2-0 over Liquid, and then they lose to Empire here. They fall down, and then a 2-0 over FaZe Clan, and then, of course, they go on to defeat Empire in the grand final. But so, yeah, they are what? Between this event and Mexico Major, they're 3-1 versus Liquid in terms of maps. They're 2-0 over NiP. They're 4-1 over Furia. They are 2-0 over FaZe, and yeah, just absolute LATAM killers. They do not really lose to LATAM teams, and that continues here with a 2-0 over MIBR. And I don't know if that's just sort of happenstance, or if it is just the way that TSM's playstyle lines up against LATAM playstyles, and I'm really inclined to say the latter because of how many times it has happened now, just every time they beat them. Okay, crazy. So that now sets up TSM versus BDS after, I guess, let's talk about this one. Yeah. Falcons, the weak link coming into the tournament. So yeah, Falcons, they got kind of crushed on Oregon, but pretty close showing on Border, pretty close to going to overtime. Go to overtime, maybe you win it out, maybe go map 3, whatever. But maybe more impressive than people expected, maybe worse from BDS, depending on how you're viewing things. So we'll have to see how BDS actually fares against a very well-known quantity in TSM. I'm sort of inclined to say TSM will win because of how dominantly, well, 7-4 isn't super dominant, but of course, it's not terribly close. 14 rounds versus 8 rounds is a pretty big margin, almost twice as many rounds over the course of the series as their opponents. So yeah, BDS still largely untested because, again, Falcons, I don't think they look like pushovers or anything, but I'll say it once again, seemingly the weakest team at the event. So yeah, then this also sets up MIBR versus Falcons in the lower bracket. I expect MIBR to win this, but we'll see what happens. And I guess if I had to pick here, I want to say TSM, especially because their record over BDS is very good. I think they're 3-0 lifetime, and I can't remember which events that was at least one SI, if not multiple SIs. Maybe they played at a major, but I couldn't say for certain. Maybe it's all 3 at SIs, whatever it is. Very good record for TSM. I expect that to continue because of, again, what we saw and BDS being very shaky. And again, TSM, even though very shaky in region, they usually always show up internationally or even just against non-NA teams. They just, for some reason, don't do as well versus NA teams. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 games to play over the course of tomorrow, and then we have a couple of playoffs and then a grand final. And did I show this before? They also added this. I'm not 100% sure if they showed it. Grand final is a best of 5, so they changed it. Before it just said all matches best of 3, but now indeed it is a best of 5 grand final, no map advantage. So there's no losers bracket, so there's no real reason why there would be. There is a loser bracket in the groups, but not in the actual playoffs. So yeah, best of 5 grand final. I thought that made a lot more sense. And okay, so I think that does it. I guess if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can feel free to leave them below. If you have any requests, questions, comments, concerns, requests, leave any of that below. A like and a subscription would be very much appreciated. And with a lot of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.